Hey everybody. So I'm back doing a review of Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery on Netflix. Before I start, please be sure to like and subscribe as I try to grow my channel. All right. So Glass Onion, I'll be honest, the only thing that even attracted me to this movie because I don't really go by, oh, this is the top 10 in the US. Sometimes and sometimes not. But it was really because Janelle Monáe was in it. And Janelle Monáe just happens to be, one of my favorite singers and artists. And I think she does a really good job acting. So that's what drew me to it. Anyway, but I watched it. And overall, it was pretty good. Like it's a good watch, and it's not based on a book, so I don't have to go in like I did before. So we have some main characters here, or at least we think we do at the beginning. So we have Lionel Toussaint, who is Leslie Odom Jr. He's a black engineer who works on different technical advancements, so on and so forth. This is how we're introduced to him. Then we have Cassandra Bland, aka Andy, who is Janelle Monáe, pretty much the star of the movie, who we don't know a lot about before the boat ride to Greece, but we're going to find out. You have Claire, who is currently the governor of Connecticut, but she's running for Senate, which is weird because typically people don't go. Okay, but whatever. Um, Duke, who is the white guy who lives with his mom, really swole for no reason, and his girlfriend, whose name is Whiskey. Okay. All right. Then we have Birdie, who's a white, this white woman who's a former model. She's throwing a party during COVID-19. Who we're introduced to, they ask her like, "Are you really throwing a party?" She's like, "Yeah, but I'm doing it in my pod, so it's perfectly okay." She's a lush, it seems. Also, then we have Miles Braun, the mysterious character who sends the box to everybody, and who we find out is like this kind of tech wizard or whatever. Um, and then finally we have Blanc Benoit. All right. Now he is the white man who is the detective who loses it between his cases mentally and has been sitting in a bathtub for a week. All right. Benoit has this like Southern New Orleans accent, but apparently he's a famous detective. Okay. Now he's very important. Him and Janelle Monáe. All right. So Blanc and Andy. All right. At least for a little while. So anyway, the glass onion is sent to everybody in this wooden box, like a literal onion, but it's glass. Where all of these friends are invited to this private island by Miles Braun, who I told you about, supposed to be some tech wizard, for a getaway on a long weekend to celebrate the bonds that connect them and to solve this mystery of his murder. It's supposed to be like, one of those clue things or whatever. So everybody else opens it together on the phone, except Janelle Monáe's character, Andy, who opens it with her hammer and goggles. We'll find that out later. We'll find out why that is. All right. So the trip takes place in Greece. This gets the. You could tell that this was very much a 2020 kind of movie and production. Um, because we constantly see people needing masks, and then they get like this gunshot to the mouth. It's supposed to keep them from catching it. I guess the vaccine before the vaccine, whatever. So Andy was apparently partners at the beginning with Miles Braun. Okay. Now later we'll find out more about this relationship. They were making, money moves. Shout out to Cardi B. And they were co-partners. I mean, they were partners in business. Um, anyway, he brings all these people to his house on a boat. They get there. The house full of tech advancements. The rooms are assigned by these biometers around their wrists. They arrive on a private island to solve a murder mystery, right? Who killed Miles Braun? Even though Miles Braun is like alive. Okay. Okay, so Miles constantly brags about all the people he knows, whose parties he's gone to, like Anderson Cooper and this, that, and the other, and all the people who want him to invest in their various projects, but he just doesn't know if he has time, so on and so forth. Like, it's that kind of thing. So, a little backstory as we go through the movie gives us. Apparently, Miles Braun is one of those people that we actually see on a regular basis who kind of starts out as a nobody, kind of a loser, can't seem to get ahead because he just has bad ideas. It doesn't follow through on things. And then next thing you know, he's blown up. And we saw this with the guy who ran the Fire Festival. We've seen this recently with Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos. These people that kind of take advantage of other people and claim they have these big products and they get all this money with investors and then they're able to invest in other people. But the problem is, it really is just kind of a large Ponzi scheme in terms of how they've gotten their money. All right. I'm not saying that's exactly what this movie is about, but it does draw these sort of parallels to society. So anyway, apparently he was a nobody when he met Birdie, and she was a former model who was all over magazines covers, and she was a fashion icon and editor. But apparently she does these like edgy racist things, right? And then claims they're like odes to like Harriet Tubman and Beyonce. Weird shit. You know, the kind of shit people get in real life trouble for on Twitter because it's racist, and then they, try to backpedal and somebody needs to take their phone, and her publicist does in this movie. All right, so disruptors are what Miles Braun calls this group of people. Disruptors are the people that are invited. They are the people who break norms and conventions to achieve the kind of things that they have now achieved in society. So people who are willing to break things, or do things that people are willing to do, especially that larger quote unquote system, that's why he calls them the disruptors. Lionel's research and, Birdie doing her own thing. Like, and, Claire being the politician. So Janelle Monáe, or Andy, she helped Braun. And apparently, what we get at the beginning is that she's feeling the way around this whole boat trip. She has an attitude. Nobody's talking to her. They're like, why did she come? And these people were former friends. So it's kind of confusing. Like, dang, this is messed up. Why did they turn their back on her? But truth be told, real life is like that. If people feel like they can get something from somebody else and that somebody else tells them they can't fuck with you, people won't. Because some people are just weak-minded like that. Anyway, Andy calls Miles Braun out and says how he has managed to connect these people, and talks about how he helped Birdie get back on her feet even after she said racist things. He's bankrolled Claire's campaign. Lionel, who works for him, and says that everybody there is holding on to Miles' golden titties. That's what she says. Like, y'all are basically afraid to not be breastfed anymore and to stand up to him. She says they'll stab a friend in the back to hold on. And that's what she believes, right? Then she walks off. So after she makes the speech, Miles ignores it and acts like, oh, it's no big deal. And that's how you can tell somebody's full of shit. When they don't address it, but they try to undermine you. Okay. Anyway. So Claire went running after her and then says, she's changed. And I'm just like, you changed too if you felt shitted and slighted by your friends. Okay. So after she makes the speech, like I said, Duke, the big swole guy that was living with his mother, so on and so forth, he catches Miles in this big, huge mansion somehow by doing his running and exercising, having sex with his girlfriend, Whiskey. Remember her? Right, she's back. While he's out on the run. This makes him angry, obviously. At least that's what we think. All right. So Miles, brings everybody back together, and he's talking about his new idea, Clear. Okay, Clear with a K, Klear. All right. Says it's zero carbon emissions and derived from abundant seawater. And he said at his private event, they're going to announce Clear America, our affordable home power solution, so on and so forth, right? And Lionel, who's the engineer, gets upset that he's creating this and taking it public, and gets angry and says, we need 2 years to ensure its safety. Because the bottom line is it wasn't safe. But Miles is motivated by sort of getting out ahead of everybody else, making money like we've seen in Silicon Valley, as we've seen on Wall Street before, whether it was Enron, like I said, whether it was Fire Festival, whether it was Theranos. Like, it continues to happen over and over again. The Tinder swindler, but that's probably the same thing. But scams, nevertheless. All right. So they find out that his entire glass onion that they're staying in is powered by Clear. So Lionel wanted out because he didn't want anything to do with it because he's not sure of its safety. But apparently he can't. And when we say can't, some people, when they say can't, what they mean is they feel like they're in too deep. They don't know how to back out. They're afraid of what their life is going to look like if they quit and walk away from something. because of the uncertainty of not having the money, the lifestyle, particularly if you've struggled to get to where you are, and maybe you've done it so long that you got in so deep you don't know how to get out. And I've been on both sides. And I've also been a risk taker in terms of, switching jobs and that kind of thing. Because the bottom line is I'm not a weak-minded person. And yeah, that will get you in trouble when you live in a society that's willing to follow the leader or whatever trend because they just want to get ahead and they don't care about principles and they can turn off all their faculties just to make money. But to me, as difficult as it is to stand up for the right thing, at least at the end of the day, it's the right thing. Um, and as a Christian, I have to do that. But there are so many people that are controlled by that. They claim Christianity, but I'm just saying. Um, anyway, but this I think does have real parallels to, especially our society now. So Blanc basically solves the crime before it even started. He's the best world's detective, country's detective, whatever. Miles was pissed, okay, because apparently he was doing his narcissistic thing where everything is about him and his fake death, whatever. So Blanc makes the point that he ruined the game on purpose. He tells Miles, "I ruined it on purpose." That we're not even an hour into it, I don't think, at this point. So he says, "Well, look, I like the metaphor of the glass onion. It seems layered, but it's glass and you can see through it all." So his point is like, Miles, you're not as clever as you think you are. You're not as smart as you think you are. And once again, this is another representation of society. The smartest people are not usually the richest people. The most cunning people can oftentimes get rich. People who are willing to do things without any sort of morality compass will get ahead. That is life. His guy is the smartest, but he's not living like that. You see what I mean? So there's a lot of good nuggets in this story. Mind you, Blanc didn't even really have a. Miles was confused why he's there anyway because he goes, "I didn't invite you." And he was like, "Oh, yeah, I got this box, so I figured I'd come. I wasn't sure why you invited me either, right?" But we'll see more. All right. So then he tells Miles that his relationship with these people, in terms of the metaphor of the glass onion, may seem complex, but he gathered these 7 people who are supposed to be his friends who have real life reasons to wish him harm and perhaps even kill him. Then you gather them on a remote island, place your idea of murder in their heads. He says it's like putting a loaded gun on the table and turning off the lights. Like, why would you even do that? You know what you've done to these people and you're emotionally manipulating them, right? Okay, now Blanc can see through all this. Blanc is not a part of this group of friends, but we're going to find out how he even ends up here. And it's not just by accident. So he starts to call him out. He goes, "Lionel, you threaten his professional reputation if he doesn't go along." So like when I said can't, are you willing to take that L? Because people will run your name in the ground, even if they're wrong. And the bottom line is, unfortunately, most people will believe those lies about you. And the people who want to help don't usually have the power to help. And that's what makes things so dangerous in this country, around work, around life. Um, you know. Anyway, Claire, he was like, "You threaten to withdraw support in the up and coming election if she doesn't approve of your power plant. This is how you're manipulating your friends." Birdie's Sweetie Pants, he was like, that's her like sweatpants thing, the former model. It's based in a Bangladesh sweatshop. And Miles, you're gonna cover, you're trying to cover your own ass as the main investor and have her take the fall. But because her career had been failing prior to you, you're able to manipulate her. Then he says Duke wants to kill him, but he claims he doesn't know about that. And Blanc says, "Oh, yes, he does. You know about screwing his girlfriend. All right." So he was like, "You're taking things from these people that you claim are your friends. I see you. Okay, for your works." All right. So anyway, so Andy addresses them. Andy, Janelle Monáe's character, addresses them for not supporting her and going along with Miles. They say they don't feel sorry for her. Life is unfair. You know what? Get over it, Andy. That basically he bought you out, not bought you out, stole your idea, and then they went along with it so they could make that kind of money. All right. So anyway, Duke, who was like a men's rights YouTuber, all of a sudden when they're after they had this little argument, Andy walks out. They realize he's the first to die. He accidentally picked up Miles' glass and took his drink. That someone apparently drugged because he dies like almost immediately. His gun disappeared from his waist at some point in this process because he always had a gun. They start trying to figure out what went wrong and where because like Duke is dead, dead. Like he's dead for real, dead. Not Clue come back to life dead. That he didn't have his weapon once he died. So Whiskey, his girlfriend, began accusing Andy of killing Duke and said she tore their room apart earlier that day. Andy got shot shortly after being accused of this by Whiskey. And it's like, okay, so Andy and Duke are gone. Where are people? What I don't get where this is going. He's already, Blanc has already solved this mystery murder. Well, they look to Blanc to help them solve what has just happened with Duke and Andy, apparently. This is where we get our little plot twist. Okay, so they go back in time where Janelle Monáe shows up at Blanc's door. She said her name was Helen Brand, and she was a third grade teacher from Alabama, and she had been doing a lot of Zooming since the pandemic. She brings him a box with the broken glass onion setup. And she says, well, my twin sister committed suicide. Her twin sister is Cassandra Brand, aka Andy, Janelle Monáe's character. Janelle Monáe plays her own twin in this. She said, well, Andy died by suicide in a garage, close garage door, cut on your car, and then kill yourself with the fumes, which people have done. Some people have done that on accident. So just as a tip, just putting that out there, make sure that whenever, you're warming up your car, particularly in the winter, that your garage is always up. All right? So anyway, plot twist. All right, she asked for the detective, Blanc, to come. She said this is the invitation. So she's like trying to scramble around. She's not a part of the seven, but she knows that her sister basically had built this alpha company, and that's the name of it. And Miles pretty much steals it from her. But anyway, he tells her to come as her sister for the weekend since they're twins. And they won't know that she's dead if she just died, especially if they're going to this remote island, if they haven't looked it up. Or basically, what he was also saying was they're not going to know since they don't talk to her, or then they'd have to admit to have been a part of her death by knowing so soon, right? So it turns out Helen Brand is, going to play her sister at the boat, right? So when we get all of this resistance at the boat with her attitude and like her not liking these people, yeah, I'm sure real Cassandra would have not liked these people either. But her sister also is angry about the way they turn their back on her, and she thinks this has a lot to do with her suicide, so on and so forth. So Helen tells the backstory of basically how Andy built this company. So Andy found this kind of eclectic group of what Miles calls the disruptors, but she calls them the shitheads because they're stupid. All right, so she tells him this is Janelle Monáe, her twin, Helen Brand. All right, so she talks to Blanc and she's like, Bertie was a washed up model. Lionel was a substitute teacher. Claire had just lost a city council election, and they were not successful people, but they were hanging out at this bar called Glass Onion. And Andy was responsible, her twin sister, for bringing them together, introducing them to Miles. And they didn't even like him at first. His ideas were off the wall. But, Andy kind of took up for him and said, well, just indulge him, whatever. But eventually good things started to happen for the group. So Andy came up with the business idea, Alpha. All right. So Miles was sold with this hydrogen idea as they developed their partnership by Norwegian scientists. And Andy's like, I'm not going to go along with that, with the company Alpha. Look, I let you become a part of this, and we're the main people. We're covering this company, but I'm not going to help you blow up the world. Literally, that is what will happen if you go along with this hydrogen idea. And Andy left and wanted to take half the company because her and Miles at this point are going in two different directions. Her case was based on intellectual property, however. And they show this scene where he was playing pool at the bar and she was writing on a napkin basically her whole business plan for Alpha. So when she takes him to court, because he manages to get the board to turn on her, All of her friends, those friends who were washed up, hanging out at the bar, who were basically struggling in life, all turned against her for their new friend, Miles. See, that's why I'm always leery about bringing people around, new friends around old friends, and sometimes just trusting people's instincts, because people will do you dirty and turn their back on you. They'll do it anyway. But like, if you can avoid it, avoid it. They all perjured themselves in court to support Miles, and Andy was at a loss because she didn't have proof of her ideas with the napkin where she wrote down her ideas in the bar. They all got up there in court, said, no, this was Miles did this. This isn't true at all. This, that, and the other. They completely turned their back on her, right? Turns out we realize Andy is really Helen now that we get back to the private island. So Duke actually put Whiskey up, right? Now that we're piecing together the mystery, right? Duke had actually put his girlfriend Whiskey up to having sex with Miles. Okay, so when they see him and they're kind of like, what the fuck? She's cheating on him like that? He had put her up, he basically pimped her out to help him get the money and exposure he wanted, with Alpha News and the media. And he watched them having sex in the bushes because he was trying to ensure that she could convince Miles to put him up in the news, right? So Birdie is talking to her publicist, and so we're getting these like individual moments where they're kind of like off to themselves. Birdie thought sweatshops, because she's a dummy, thought sweatshops were where they made sweatpants, okay? The little birdie pants or whatever she makes. Turns out Miles told her that she took full responsibility for the issues of the sweatshop and says, hey, it was my fault, this was my mistake, and the whole world gets mad at her. Because she's already known for making, ethnic slurs, racist comments on Twitter, and then claiming she had no idea. That if she goes ahead and does this, takes the fall for him, even though he knew what it was, as far as exploiting people, that he would pay her for her shares when it inevitably gets shut down, and he'll pay her $30 million. And Birdie tells her publicist that this is her only lifeline. Like, I lost a lot of things after being a model. I fell off, and, $30 million will basically make my life comfortable. Once again, those things where it becomes character and principles versus money. And in a society where everything is based on money, one way or another, people will do that. They'll take the hit. So Helen tells Whiskey, Duke's girlfriend, that Duke did deserve to die, right? But she's still playing Andy, okay? To them, they think it's Andy. He did deserve to die when she was crying about him. And she says he's a bastard and he deserved this. And she was like, and Whiskey, you deserve better. Whiskey comes after her with a pitchfork. They get to fighting. It's a mess, okay? Which is what Whiskey was talking about when she accused Andy earlier in the movie and said, you tore our room apart earlier. Well, that was what happened. So anyway, they put hot sauce on themselves. So now you have Helen, who is appearing to Andy as the rest of them. But Helen is conspiring with Blanc. And he's like, look, let's put hot sauce on you to make it look like you got shot. All right? To pretend Helen is dead. And so Blanc can appear like he was in the line of fire. He puts some on his face. So she can go and look for the envelope of evidence, okay, of what Andy had sent Miles at one point. He said, I can buy you about 5 minutes with this hot sauce. Well, she gets it. All right? So Blanc takes the whole crew. The crew are the disruptors, a.k.a. the shitheads, whoever you want to call them, to the Glass Onion. And he's like, and they're like, well, what happened? What happened? He's like, okay, I'll try to peel back the layers of the case. Pun. Boom, 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 psh. All right. So Helen finds the red envelope while he's explaining the mystery to the disruptors and Miles. And the envelope basically says XO Andy. Hugs and kisses Andy. All right. So meanwhile, as Blanc talks about the case, these are the things that he goes down. He was like, I presumed Miles Braun was a genius, right? The tech genius, the person who's making all this money. Because we have this assumption in this country in particular, if you make a lot of money, you must be smart. That's not true. There's plenty of dumb fucking people that make plenty of money. Because you know what? If dumb people are in charge, they can be controlled by a small few who might be smart, which keeps other smart people out because dumb people tend to be threatened by people who are better at something than they are. Instead of trying to be better at it, they just rather shut the smart person down. Okay? So, when Blanc makes the point, I presume Miles Braun was a genius, but I looked through the onion that we're looking up at the top, and he's an idiot. All right? He says Miles is a liar, essentially, and then Miles killed Duke. That night at Anderson Cooper's birthday that he was bragging about going to, Duke saw Miles, and everybody thought Miles had been in Greece for 6 months. Like Lionel goes, no, he was away in Greece. Miles was sent a fax about the emails that Andy had control of and had the power to pull him down with. So he goes to Andy's house in his baby blue Porsche, as they point out to us, whatever. And Andy lets him in the house. Of course, they had been partners or whatever, knowing the power of his attorneys and connections, and that he essentially has power over her. So I guess she felt like it was necessary to let them have a conversation. Miles apparently killed Andy, or kills her. Makes it look like a suicide. All right, but Duke knew that Miles went to Andy's house that night. Duke is the only person who knew, which is why he killed him. And Blanc points out that he didn't have to hide Cassandra's death, Andy's death. He just needed to hide that Duke showed him her death by suicide on the Google alert, where they both said, look, this will make it difficult to prove now, right? Like that they were guilty. So Duke was willing to have Miles buy his silence, because that's what they're all willing to do. It's just about money, by giving him a space in quote unquote the Alpha News company. All right, so Miles made him think he would help him. Miles put pineapple juice in Duke's whiskey because he had an allergy to pineapple. And it took over his body and killed him. And Blanc goes, Miles is just fucking dumb. He killed somebody with fucking pineapple juice. And Bird Brain Birdie says, it's so dumb, it's brilliant, despite the fact that her friend is dead. And then Blanc retorts, no, it's just dumb. Like, we're not going to call a spade, okay? So by the time Blanc explains how Duke died, the disruptors finally look at their phones, dummies, and realize Andy is dead and that she is survived by her twin sister, Helen. So they're like, if she's dead, how is she here? And they look, and Helen is the person they have been looking at this entire weekend. Okay? Gotcha. All right. So Blanc points out how stupid Miles Braun is. He said he stole the whole idea from me. Blanc says from me. Like, he listened to me and he basically did it. So Helen confronts him with the napkin of her ideas in the midst of Blanc explaining the mystery. And she says, this is the official napkin that my sister had. And, Miles didn't sweat, and he was like, that doesn't prove anything. She still could have stolen it from me, right? The difference, she said, was that her napkin had something that his didn't, that he used as evidence in court, the Glass Onion label from the bar, which had closed 9 years before, where that apparently had taken place and where he took credit for having come up with the idea at that place, which would have made it easy to prove he stole her idea. Then she shows it to him. I was thinking to myself, girl, you never show the evidence. You just tell me that you got it until you can protect it and copy it. Then she shows it to him and says, now we have you, you son of a bitch. He pulls out a lighter and burns the evidence in her face. I was like, dumb move, Helen. Dumb move. Then she points after he burned it. And he goes, well, I didn't see anything happen. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And of course, all of the people, the disruptors, are silenced by their hopes and ties to his money. Because she goes, raise your hand if you saw it. None of them saw it. They just watched the whole thing go up in the flames and nobody saw it. All right. And this was supposed to be the only evidence. He then says to Helen that your sister was a complicated woman, but she meant the world to me. I'm really sorry for your loss. Right. This is after he burns the evidence and everything. She turns to them and says, like I said, raise your hand. Then she asks Blanc to help her. And Blanc just kind of shrugs his shoulders and says, this is where his jurisdiction ends because he's a detective. Like, I did the work, take it to court, do whatever. But I can't do anything now because the evidence is destroyed. So he offers her some courage, liquid courage, to remind her of why her sister walked away from all this shit in the first place. He walks off. She starts breaking, literally, Helen starts breaking all that glass, expensive shit in his house, which we know is probably cheap for the movie, but you get my point. And the disruptors cheer her on, right? But once again, she's by herself for a little while because these people, they can cheer you on and then kind of stay back like this because they don't want to get hit. All right? So then Birdie and Whiskey start to break all the glass shit too. Miles keeps drinking his wine. He's just unmoved and unbothered. And says for them to let it all out. Go ahead, let it all out. Like, I can buy some more. So then Helen keeps tearing up all his shit. I mean, like, she's fucking his shit up. And she sets fire to this Glass Onion box, the one that they sent to everybody. and the den and the pillows and the blankets. And Miles finally has a fit and goes, enough, walk away. And that, like, that bullshit voice, men try to put over on women, especially liars and cheaters and exploiters like him. All right. She says, yes, I will walk away with the courage my sister had. It was apparently this little crystal that she had in her hand that she threw into the fire. And the crystal was something that Blanc handed her as he pretended to only hand her like a drink. Right. And then one of the last things they go after, her and Miles both start running toward that Mona Lisa painting that we saw from the beginning, which was the original. She pressed down the button so that the painting burns with all the other things that have been set on fire. Miles comes out of the house screaming at Helen and saying, are you done with your little bitch tantrum? Um, in his, in his white man voice. And you've accomplished nothing. And Helen turns around and responds after she's sitting on the steps after she done tore up all his shit. Responds by saying, your fuel of the future just destroyed the world's most famous painting, you dumbass. And remember, it was the original, right? Of the Mona Lisa. So she said, congratulations on the public launching of Clear and the end of Miles Braun. I said, okay, Helen Brand / Cassandra / Janelle Monáe. He then looks to the gang / disruptors / shitheads and says, no, we all saw what happened, right? And then all of a sudden the disruptors raise their hand and say, I saw you burn a napkin. I saw you take Duke's gun. And they kind of turn on him, but still kind of like in a weak-willed way. I wasn't impressed because it just seems like, oh, now Helen's announced his end. So you can't do shit for me, so fuck you. So meanwhile, Blanc, after he solved the mystery, went outside. He's outside just smoking a cigar with his little hat on, waiting for the boat, and says, did you get that son of a bitch? He says it's to Helen. Are you ready to go home? And that's where it ends when we see the ships with basically like these ambulance lights coming to the private island because there's a fire. So, I mean, it was good. It was a good little mystery story. There are parts you go, well, they could have shored this up a little bit more and that kind of thing. But it was a good watch. It was a good watch. Shout out to Janelle Monáe. Fun fact about Janelle Monáe. Okay, I was first introduced to Janelle Monáe when I was in college. Okay, and I was in my freshman year in college, 2006, fall 2006. Oh my gosh. And Janelle Monáe was at our homecoming concert, and at that point she wasn't like big yet. And she was still associated with Outkast and that kind of crew. And so I got tickets to see her perform for like $10. Like, and then you see her blow up. So anyway, shout out to her. So anyway, that's my review, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.